Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live. Talk radio without the static. Email your questions and comments to lynncullenshow@gmail.com. And now your host, Lynn Cullen.
Oh boy. So, that which Christopher Hitchens said that his biggest regret at knowing he was dying young was that he would not have the pleasure of seeing Henry Kissinger dead. And it just drove him nuts that Henry Kissinger was going to outlive him. And as it turns out, I outlived him by a substantial number of years. I must say, yes, when I saw Kissinger had died, I had the same reaction, like, hundreds. And I've read more than one obituary today, and what I'm reminded of is, again, the complexity of a human. So, the reality is that Henry Kissinger did do some things that were, in fact, laudable. He also did some things that were just, well, Hitchens would say, many others would say, war crimes. Kissinger, I guess, would say he was a pragmatist. I recall reading one quote in which he said, there are no easy answers. He's right, I'm sure. Even in dealing with one-on-one human connections, each one of us knows that navigating the world is not easy. And you're often faced with situations in which there's no good response. So you have to choose between the two or whatever. You have to pick the least appalling path. And Kissinger had said it was often a choice choosing between two evils when you're dealing with geopolitics, which is, in fact, meaning dealing with men in power. But to see the breadth and the depth of his work, and how a single man who was not the president of a country could wield so much power is awesome and troubling. Being reminded of his prickly relationship with Nixon, and how he often did things or refused to do things that Nixon told him to do. Sometimes for the good, and sometimes who knows. I mean, he thought Nixon, and that it was true toward the end, was literally coming unglued. I can't even begin to imagine that scene where Nixon, toward the end, forced Henry Kissinger to his knees to pray with him, and Nixon began sobbing. I'm trying to even picture Henry Kissinger and Richard Nixon on their knees with Nixon sobbing and Kissinger uncomfortably putting his arm around him. A reminder, though, that these men who wield power are, in fact, men. One of the things that, two of the things that I think are most unforgivable about what Kissinger did in his efforts to choose between evils, as he put it, was, among many things during the Vietnam War, he is the one who told Nixon, this is in 1969, Kissinger, keeping it secret from Congress, he plotted the bombing of a neutral country, Cambodia. Hard to imagine, huh? He did do that. And what occurred as a result of that was easily 500,000 dead Cambodians, innocent people drawn into this horror. Hard to imagine. The bombing initially was secret. I mean, they just went in and started bombing the hell out of them. And it expanded the Vietnam War geographically. And then the Americans, that would be, our troops invaded Cambodia the following year. And all of that ended up leading to the Khmer Rouge, that murderous, horrific bunch of killers coming into power. Now, that alone obviously tarnishes the legacy of Henry Kissinger. He was a big promoter of the Shah of Iran. I know somebody said there was not a dictator he didn't cozy up to. As a matter of fact, do you remember? I mean, it was just a few months ago. I remember seeing the picture and thinking, "What?" And it was Henry Kissinger this summer. He was 100 years old then. He had traveled to Beijing, and he was greeted like a god. And there he was with, the powers that be. But his promotion of the Shah and feeding his megalomania led to the Iranian Revolution. We all know what's happened since. He has been accused of being part of the conniving in the coup that overthrew the government of Cyprus and supporting Pakistan's quashing of secessionist rebellion in Bangladesh, because Pakistan was his secret conduit to the Chinese. You know, imagine a man playing this high stakes geopolitical game, but always failing to care about the impact he was having on literally the lives of hundreds of thousands of people. And then there's, of course, closer to home, Chile. He, more than anyone, is responsible for the overthrow of the democratically elected president of Chile. And Kissinger went after him because Salvador Allende was a socialist. And that was something that Kissinger could not abide, that anybody to the left of outright capitalism could get a toehold in South America. And so he worked with the CIA. Boy, the number of people that died as a result of this. Imagine this, the people of Chile elected a good man, and Henry Kissinger, and Nixon, and the U.S. through covert operations end up killing the commander-in-chief of the armed forces, and then Allende. And who did we put in place of this good man, Salvador Allende? Yeah. General Pinochet. As brutal, fascist as could be. Henry Kissinger. And this article I'm reading said that, I mean, by the way, the State Department was often at odds with Kissinger. And they would push back, and they would be absolutely kneecapped. And when the Assistant Secretary of State for Inter-American Affairs said to Kissinger, you have to tell Congress about the hundreds of people that Pinochet is killing, innocent people, he's rounding them up and he's killing them. Kissinger said, I think we should understand that our policy, however unpleasant they act, the Pinochet government is better for us than Allende was. So we, the United States, and Kissinger and Nixon helped Pinochet consolidate power, gave him economic aid, gave him military aid, CIA assisting. We helped him create his infamous secret police. Kissinger complained at one point about a briefing paper he was given about Chile. And he said, I read the briefing paper for this meeting, and it was nothing but human rights. The State Department's made up of people who have a vocation for the ministry, because apparently there are not enough churches for them. They went into the Department of State. So, yeah. But certainly one must say a consequential life. What a vile character to me. I am sorry. Where did I see the line? I thought it was so funny. that he was, that I've said all this. Oh, here it is. Kissinger seems like such a nice man on TV, explaining foreign policy in that cute German accent that makes him sound like the Dr. Ruth of geopolitics. I love that. Yeah. So this is a guy who lucked out in because his family in Germany, after suffering incredible terror and humiliation and the loss of his father's income, managed to get the hell out with young Henry in tow and come to the United States. And yet when he became so powerful here, there was an effort at one time, perhaps you'll remember. Actually, it reminds me of a Saturday Night Live skit. You'll remember that there was a synagogue in Squirrel Hill that had a big banner that said, "Save Soviet Jewry," Jwry. And I think the Soviet Union was really going to town on its Jews at the time. And Henry was working really hard for some measure of détente with the Soviets, and he didn't want to rub them the wrong way. So he actively worked against these efforts to get Soviet Jews out. And I'm remembering what it had been Rosanna Dan, talking about, what is this about saving Soviet jewelry? And I could never see that sign without thinking the same thing. But boy, he was not in any way, again, the lives of Soviet Jews didn't matter as much as his bigger game of geopolitics that he was playing. And so there was an amendment in Congress called the Jackson-Vanik Amendment that was aimed at pressuring the Soviets to let the Jews go. And it had to do with trade sanctions and things like that. And Kissinger, so himself a Jew who had run for his life, if he hadn't gotten out, if he hadn't made it here, he'd be dead. He considered this amendment and Congress's meddling a true hindrance to his personal pursuits on a much higher plane. And he always placed his strategic interests above any humanitarian concerns. He persuaded President Ford not to meet the exiled Russian author Alexander Solzhenitsyn at the White House, because that too would ruffle the Soviets' feathers. Interesting that somebody who was, Margaret, I just saw your email. Okay, well, I don't know. Margaret says, he is dead. Please move on. Yeah, but, the result of so much of what he did is the world we're living in now. When you look at the more consequential figures of the 20th century, man, he's there. And then I was always so creeped out by his romances with all these, starlets. Not that I mean to disparage actors, but he dated Jill St. John was his main babe, but Marlo Thomas, Candice Bergen, Shirley MacLaine, who knows how many others. And lest you think that it is not true that power is the greatest aphrodisiac if you want women, there it is. I mean, he was what? If I don't watch the Colbert Show, he was on Colbert all the time, and well into his 90s. Wow. So, yeah, I don't know that I have anything to say more about him. What I know is that as soon as I heard he was dead, I did think of Christopher Hitchens. Who died too young. I got to tell you something. Okay, Margaret, I'll make you happy. I'll stop. On Kissinger. God knows if you watch news, I'm sure you'll be subjected to much about him. But the other extremely consequential man whose presence was sort of centered in my life in the last 24 hours, much to my astonishment, was the guy I love to hate, Elon Musk. And I did something last night that I have not done ever. It felt like over 2 hours, but I'm sure it wasn't. But it was over an hour listening to him. I happened upon, while scrolling through I don't know if I was on that new site Threads. I must have been, I don't know. And I bumped into a live stream, something that was happening right then, brought to everybody by the New York Times, called the New York Times Deal Book Summit. And apparently, man, a lot of big movers and shakers were there, and they'd sit for interviews. What I came upon was Musk being interviewed in front of an audience last night by Andrew Ross Sorkin, who I must say did a hell of a job. It was such a good interview that I became stuck. I forgot I hadn't eaten dinner. When I ended up having to take my dog for a walk in the dark, I took it with me so that I was hearing Musk on the walk. He was stuck in my pocket of my coat. I couldn't stop listening. And it was the first time that I realized really how, talk about complex, how complicated this guy is and how unhappy he is. He was at times, Sorkin was such a great interviewer that while Musk started with this bombastic, being the Musk I hate, somewhere at some point, Sorkin got him into a contemplative mood, and he became, to me, fascinating. Fascinating. So that I was like hanging on his every word. That has never happened to me. So last night, I became more aware of this guy's complexity, and I'm always arguing about that, this impulse we have to put people into, good, bad, evil. This lazy kind of thinking of refusing to tolerate that everything is much, much more complicated than we want it to be, which is why we're always trying to simplify things. And by doing that, we distort them, and not good. So I want to say that I have a much greater appreciation for Elon Musk's successes and his intent. And I don't agree with a lot of what he said, God knows. And he's not particularly articulate. He seems uncomfortable, at the same time being very sure of himself. What an odd man. But at one point, he admitted that inside his head, there is often this sort of wild storm. He has such an amazing brain, obviously, that it just keeps shooting out ideas, and they're bouncing around in his head, and he has no peace, ever. At one point, Sorkin says to him something like, he asks him if he's happy, and Musk says no. And he talks about the storms in his head and how he can never. And then Sorkin said to him, why? Why are you not happy? And oh my God, Musk sat there. He muttered something about, what, you got me on a psychiatrist's couch? But he didn't. He just sat there, and Sorkin, being a great interviewer, let him. So there was silence for a long time. The audience was silent. And then you saw this inarticulate, damaged person respond. He said, I was born this way. He talked about being different from day one. Everybody around him, I was born this way. And then, he says, I know it was amplified by a difficult childhood. And he went on, there's just that constant rage of forces in my head. These demons, he said, of my mind. So he's a tortured soul. But then he said, and he may well be right, but he said, I think the results on balance have been productive. He said, I know once in a while it all goes wrong. And he talked about how he makes these, quick decisions and quick mistakes. And it's clear that the guy has very little control in those moments, which is the scary part because of the power he wields. He said some things I did not know. He said that, he said, I've done more to save, the planet than anybody with, making electric vehicles the obvious way of the future. And then he was asked if he felt he was going to have a lot of competition. And he said, well, yes, of course. But, he said, I welcome it. He said, I have not, and I did not know this. All the stuff he has come up with that, would be patented, and maybe has been patented, that belongs to him, how Tesla works, how you make a Tesla. He apparently has that available to anybody. He doesn't do what I always thought most corporations did, that if they had something nobody else had, man, they made sure no one was going to get their hands on the, secret recipe. And he said with SpaceX, with Tesla, with all his stuff, he says, have at it. The more the merrier. Interesting. But wow. He has a view that is so unlike anybody's I've ever heard. He says things about Earth all the time. Let the people of Earth decide. He is so fixated on the fact that we, Earth, is just a small part of something so much larger. And he really does think that if humans remain a single planetary civilization, we're doomed. That we've got to get out there amongst the stars. We have to have more than a planet or we're finished. And I bet he's right, because we will. It's clear when people say, oh, we're destroying the Earth. No, we're not. We're destroying life on Earth. The planet's going to be here, and it will, over billions of years, rejuvenate after we have finished our destruction of ourselves and everybody else on the planet. He said that the advertising boycott on Twitter would kill the company. He apologized a number of times for retweeting this anti-Semitic thing he did. He said he was not an anti-Semite. He said, if anything, I'm a philo-Semite, meaning a Jew lover. He pointed out that he's wearing a necklace. I guess it's something, I can't remember what it says, maybe bring them home, I think, that was given to him in Israel by a hostage's family. And he told them, I will wear it until they're all out. And, I don't know. He also said to the advertisers more than once, fuck you. He said, you can't blackmail me. And then he actually called out the head of Disney, Bob Iger, who was also at this event and had spoken earlier. And he said, hey, go fuck yourself, all of you. And hey, Bob, are you in the audience? Go fuck yourself. But it's quite clear that if the boycott destroys, he says it won't destroy Twitter because there's the Earth. Twitter is so huge, if Americans go nuts about it or whatever, it'll still remain. And he doesn't care. He's got so much money. I have to tell you, I was just blown away by him. And he did say one thing that scared the bejeebers out of me. He was asked about what happened last week, I think it was, at, Open AI, the company that Sam Altman, who's a friend of his, somebody he knows, who's in the same biz, somebody he's worked with. Sam Altman, who is working to get AI out there. There was an attempted coup that did throw him out for a bit. And then there was an uprising of workers and employees, and so he's back. But the guy who instigated the coup was like the head scientist. And what Musk said, he knows this guy, the scientist, very well. And he says, this guy is a serious guy, and there's no way he would have attempted this coup unless he was truly worried that something's wrong, that Altman and OpenAI are moving forward when something's wrong. In other words, it's not as safe as it should be. This guy was very concerned with AI getting out of control, as am I. And so it's Musk's bet that something really bad is going on. And he flat out said, I could not sleep for so long thinking about what we've unleashed. And then I just realized I can't stop it. So he said, I've become fatalistic about it. I'm resigned to artificial intelligence and its danger. And about its danger, he was very clear. He says, AI is much more dangerous than nuclear bombs. We regulate the hell out of nuclear stuff. We have no regulation right now on something much, much more dangerous that is moving so fast. And so he was asked, how fast? When do you think we'll get to the point where artificial intelligence knows more about absolutely everything than all of humans on Earth? When will that happen? And it was his answer that chilled me. He said, I think maybe 3 years. 3 years. And then he mentioned that Chinese curse that I always like too. May you live in interesting times. He said, these are perhaps the most interesting times humans have ever lived in. But remember, this is a guy too who's saying that we got to get to another planet if we're going to survive. I think he's right. Now, my fear of AI, is one thing, and it's based in whatever, just my gut. His fear of AI is quite another thing. It's based on understanding it. And he's scared. And he can't sleep, although he's decided he'll sleep because what could he do? So as he says, he's resigned. Wow. Just saying. So that was all so heavy, my God. And then I came home from my walk and Henry Kissinger was dead. Jeez. Yeah, Jonathan saying, yeah, Soviet. He said Emily Latella saved Soviet jewelry. Who wouldn't have thought that? And I have a feeling that a lot of people seeing that sign because the word Jewry looks like a misspelling, because whoever says Jewry, right? I mean, it would have been more say save Soviet Jews would have been better. But save Soviet Jewry, I never use that word. It was a bad sign, and led to, obvious confusion on the part of, I'm sure, many, many, many people. Oh, God. Hey, guys, something, because of a court case, the Washington Post has a report on this. It's, wow, fascinating. It details communications that are now in the hands of prosecutors and investigators in the Justice Department that Pennsylvania Representative Scott Perry had with everybody, all the guys who have been now indicted. He's the only, he was so central to this attempt to overthrow the government that it is mind-blowing he has not been indicted. And what happened that the Post got their hands on some of this stuff is, it says here, I'll just read it rather than try to explain it. In a court dispute over prosecutors' access to Congressman Perry's phone, the U.S. Court of Appeals said, for D.C., said that a district court judge needed to individually review roughly 2,000 communications that on Perry's phone to decide which ones were qualified as speech and which qualified as debate. This being, if it's debate, it's a way for an elected person to avoid jeopardy. Oh, well, we were just, as a member of Congress, I have to, So what is speech? What is debate? Because members of Congress are granted immunity from criminal investigation if they're acting in an official capacity. But what happened is that the appeals court yesterday exposed many of the messages by unsealing the lower court judge's 51-page opinion, which had only been available before, totally blacked out in redactions. And apparently it showed up for a few hours on Wednesday afternoon before they realized it and sealed it up again. But obviously some intrepid Washington Post reporter gobbled it up and found all kinds of incriminating stuff. Here's just one little thing. On December 30th, 2020, Jeffrey Clark, who's now, of course, under indictment and is heading to jail without a doubt, Jeffrey Clark over in Philadelphia was nervous. He had just been told that Donald Trump was very, very happy with him. So Jeffrey Clark, working at the Justice Department, gets in touch with Scott Perry and says, I'm praying. Perry, just 2 weeks before, had gotten him into the Oval Office to see Trump. And Trump, the idea being that Trump would make him, right, Attorney General. And so he's told Trump really likes him. And then he says, I'm so nervous. What's he nervous about? I'm praying, he says. And he says to the congressman from Pennsylvania, and I wonder if I'm worthy or ready. And Perry replies to him, "You are the man. I have confirmed it. God does what he does for a reason." What? I have confirmed you are the man. This Perry, Congressman Perry, is as creepy and dangerous as they come. Where the hell is his district? Obviously, it's somewhere in Pennsylvania. My God. These are part of these Christo nationalist fascists. God almighty. Perry was in touch with not only Jeffrey Clark, with John Eastman, with Jenna Ellis, with Rudy Giuliani, with Mark Meadows, with Sidney Powell, with the president himself. And you tell me what you recognize about all those names. Yeah, they're all under indictment. And Perry, for some reason, has not, even though he knows he's guilty, because he begged Trump for a preemptive pardon. He says he didn't, but he did. So, anyway, just saying. There's a lot of people who are going to get away with this attempt to overthrow the government of the United States. It's unbelievable. A lot of sitting members of Congress, with Scott Perry being, Exhibit A in that regard. Hey, I got a nice story for you. Okay, we could use one. I have a nice story. So there's a professional football player, and he's driving to the stadium on Sunday for the game. And you have to be there at least by noon. And he gets the air pressure in his tire starts going out. And he says, "Oh, damn it." I mean, apparently this has been an ongoing problem. And he stops and puts some air in it and keeps going. And deflating again really quickly. And it's now 11:15. He says, I'll just change the tire. So he goes and looks. There's no spare. He called the stadium and he told whoever he had to tell, "Hey guys, I'm out here. I got a flat, essentially tire," and they said, "Well, we'll come get you." And he said, "Well, that ain't gonna work. I'm still not gonna get there in time." So he said, "I'll figure this out." And he looked over and saw. He was at a gas station at that point. He saw a guy pumping gas and wearing the team jersey. He thought, well, maybe this guy's going to the game. And he sort of looked in the car, and there were 3 little kids, and they all had on jerseys too. So he walked up to this guy, and he said, "You going to the game?" And the guy who was pumping gas said, "Yeah." And then the player said, "I'm a player. I got a flat tire. I need a ride. And so he jumped into the car with the 3 kids, the wife, and the guy, and off they went to the stadium. Now, I'll tell you it's such a cute story because this guy, this is an Arizona Cardinal. And he's a second-year player, drafted out of Penn State. I say this for all you Penn State fans because you might know him. Jesse Luketa, I think. He's a linebacker. And I'm looking at a picture of him with these 3 kids that was taken after the game. And it is so cute. Anyway, they got to the stadium at 11:52, 8 minutes to spare. And the team and they all arranged for this family to have nice seats and all that kind of stuff, providing tickets for another game. So anyway, it's just a cute story. The smile on this guy's face, incredible. He's apparently from Canada. Cute guy. Lousy team. They've only won 2 games. They lost that one too. So I just thought that was a nice little story. Can you imagine if you're pumping gas into your car and one of the team players comes up and says, "Help! Help me. I gotta get there." And he's driving like sort of a beat up car. It was not and apparently this happens a lot. And his teammates had been razzing him about the fact that his car was not exactly reliable. So he sounds like sort of a nice, easygoing guy. All I'm saying. What else? Geez, Barbra Streisand, has this book. There's a lot of books out. And I'm not big on biographies, but, between Liz Cheney's and Barbra Streisand, there's no way. First of all, it's almost 1,000 pages long. Good God. I mean, and I know she dishes a lot of dirt. But I'm not interested. Liz Cheney's dirt dishing is of more interest to me. And I guess she's going to be, that book is coming out any second. So she's going to be popping up on all the shows, telling things out of school. A gutsy woman. All I got to say. Good God. Let me quickly make sure I'm not. Well, Margaret says good ending. I'm not talking about good ending. Have a great weekend. I got 6 minutes left, Margaret. Hey, what about? I don't want to talk about it. Never mind. What about? Forget it. Oh God. I want to just quickly go through some stuff that I haven't had it. Oh God, I ended up, dealing with an AI last night. I had ordered food. It didn't show up. Oh, I was told I was texted that my food had arrived. I thought, I didn't hear anything. I went out and it wasn't arrived at all. And I thought, it has not arrived. What do you mean it's arrived? What do you mean you put it? What? Wrong address. You gave it to the wrong people. I'm starving here. It's after I forgot to eat listening to Musk, and then I walked the dog, and I'm starving here. So I tried to get in touch with the driver who had sent that it was here. No answer. I text, no answer. And then I see that she sent a picture. It was a woman, sent a picture to me showing it had arrived. And there was a picture of a bag of food in a place I did not recognize. It was not my front porch. I thought, is that my neighbor's front porch? So anyway, I went out in the cold. I schlepped over to one neighbor, hoping they weren't looking out the window and wondering why I was skulking around the front yard. And then wasn't there. So I skulked around over to the other neighbor, and lo and behold, there it was. I got it. I bring it in. It's cold. I warm it up. I eat it. But I'm annoyed. And I thought, I'm going to let him know. This is just, And so I end up dealing with, here's what she says. This is the AI thing. Thank you for contacting us, and thank you for being a member. My name is She, and I will be assisting you today. And I try to start explaining, and apparently I wasn't quick enough, and she writes, are you still with me? Saying, yes. And the last thing I say, and the food was cold. My apologies, she says. Please give me a moment. I will see what I can do. And then the questions start. Exactly what was cold? I'm not kidding. What do you mean what was cold? Oh, goddamn thing was cold. And I thought, this is ridiculous. I can't. I just... And then a human called me from Chicago with an indecipherable accent and said, I understand you. And I'm thinking, this is not worth it. I said, look, just wanted you guys to know, maybe you could credit me a little bit, something or other, and blah, blah, blah. And so anyway, finally, after backing and forthing with this person I could not understand, and she clearly couldn't understand me either, she happily told me she could give me a $5 credit. And I'm thinking, well, yeah, fine. I said, fine, give me your $5 credit. I said, but the reality is you guys did not deliver my food. I delivered my food after schlepping around my neighborhood in the cold. Now, normally, I don't do that. And then I realized you can't be screaming at this poor soul. So I said, thank you very much, and hung up. Oh, no. Milton's telling me Streisand has a clone dog, too. I was saying this horrible new president of Argentina has cloned his beloved dead dog five times. So he's got 5 now of the same dog. And Streisand did it, too. God almighty. Whatever. What a wild, I'm telling you. So, yeah, okay, now I think that's about it. All right. Well, this was the Kissinger Musk edition of Lynn Cullen show. And just remember, we're toast in 3 years. And that comes from a guy who knows. My new friend. Well, I look at him as a more, he's not one-dimensional to me anymore. But what a mucked up person he is. And what a genius. Elon Musk. All right, that be it. Have a good weekend. Mine starts now.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Thursday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper or its advertisers.